Hi everyone, this is AnatomicArt, and I'll be giving some of my brief thoughts on today's book, which is Yeezy Season 3 through 4 by Jackie Nickerson. So just going into a little bit about Miss Nickerson's background. So she's a clothing and fashion portrait photographer, and she originally started doing commercial photography. So she did magazines and publications and advertisements, and her shift started going away from that type of work in the late 1990s when she started shooting photographs in different countries, the various countries of Africa. And she was mainly focused on shooting the different people and the clothing that they wore and the conditions that they lived in. And this work really, doing this type of work and seeing these people and the way that they were, their conditions really impacted her, and it caused her to make an entire series based off of that. And it was called Farm. And she wanted to portray, not in a negative light, the conditions that these farmers and people were living in, but to kind of challenge the stereotypes and the biases of the people looking at her photographs. And now we can kind of get into a little bit more about how her work combines with the vision of Yeezy and the vision of Ye during this time. So this Zine, this Zine was published in 2016, 2017, which was covering the seasons 3 through 4 of Ye's clothing brand, Yeezy. This clothing brand is mainly like shapewear and shoes. So just looking at some of these photographs, the way that they're edited and the way that they're shot, it matches the earlier work of Nickerson's pictures, and they have really desaturated colors. The models and the way that their pose and the clothing, they're very like stoic and they're very static, but they're very expressive for the way that the clothing is shown and the emotions that are coming out. And looking at some of the models, you might recognize some of them are rappers or some of them are famous models, and that's another way that the models are being. That's another way that Ye is incorporating the culture into the way that he displays his clothing. When this Yeezy Season 3 was first shown at Madison Square Garden, that was for his Life of Pablo album. And even there, he incorporated some rappers wearing the clothing, like Young Thug and Lil Yachty. Looking at season 3, there's those types of examples, but also season 4 was mainly focused on women's clothing and women's shapewear. So you're kind of seeing some of that theme incorporated into these pictures, like with the mannequins. And I think it's a comment on the way that women are portrayed and the way that women are displayed, and that's something that Ye probably tapped into Nickerson to portray in the pictures. Nickerson has stated that she uses film for a lot of her pictures, 35 millimeter film, and I don't know about other types, but you can just see how, especially with the Zine format, a lot of the vertical images and how there's a lot of grain and the saturated colors, all the aesthetic and stylistic choices are displayed in these pictures. And then just looking at some of these more recent pictures, again, looking at the way that the models are posed and even the uniqueness of some of the models chosen, the way that they look and the way that they're showing their tattoos or the freckles on their faces, their imperfections. It kind of gives that brand statement that Yeezy wants to have of relaxed wear, but also very fashionable. And of course, we see the Adidas shoes here, the Yeezys worn on some of the people. Also looking at some of Nickerson's other work, she goes into doing the model and portrait photos with the fashion, but also showing the surroundings and the environment, which we see here with some of the photos of the chain fences or the back alleys or the streets. So again, this is a display of Yeezy season 3 through 4, but we're seeing some Adidas stuff, some Calabasas, some of the shoes, the Yeezy shoes and the Yeezy socks, and everything that comes along with that. I like to look at some of the backgrounds. Again, one of the things when you're photographing portraits, you're trying to tell a story with what the model is wearing or what they're doing in the background. A lot of these are void and removed of the background, and some of them you can even see it's just like a tarp in the back, or there's some wrinkles on it, or it's just the black. And it gives, especially with the way that the Zine is laid out, with some pages taking up an entire page, or some images taking up an entire page, or where there's the half spread where there's one picture on one side and nothing on the other. It gives a very intentional feeling and intentional look to a lot of these pictures, and especially with the desaturated look, it kind of gives a haunted look. But thank you for listening and flipping along. Let me know what thoughts you had with this book, and I'll see you in the next flip through.